I'm Rachael Wegner. I've been attending New Hope for about 7 years now, and I have a story of God's glory I just wanted to share. So when I was about 19 or so in college, I was on a volleyball scholarship. I had my life figured out, expectations planned. I started experiencing VTAC, and then I started falling asleep everywhere and not being able to wake up. They tested me for narcolepsy, and that wasn't it, but they put me on the medication so I could get through classes. I kept going and I kept getting worse. With no answers from doctors, it wasn't MS, they kind of gave up. My dad was praying, and one night he audibly hears Lyme's disease, and he looks it up, and the symptoms seem to go along with my timeline and my symptoms, and so he calls my mother and gives her the number of 3 specialists. And so she calls the specialists and figures out their processes and gets me an appointment. However, the appointment that she was able to get me was 3 months out, and I started to hit a slope of not doing well. I was going down fast. One of the doctors that my mom called but didn't make an appointment with called back and said they had an opening coming up the following weekend. They had a cancellation. Then it turns out it was Lyme's disease, but of course at this point it was completely chronic. So he gave me expectations for my life that this would be something I would have to continuously battle. At one point I was on 28 pills a day, and then they wanted to up the dosage to a medicine, and my mom was like, no, this is a potentially very dangerous drug. I don't like this. We're going to go to New Zealand and try fresh air. And so she got it set up to where she could get a job in New Zealand, and we were going to move. I went to say goodbye to my father, and while I was there to say goodbye to him, he says, hey, let's go up to the prayer room. Let's pray for you. I used oil and he prayed over me, and there was another man there who at the time I thought was my dad's pastor, one of the pastors of his church, and he was praying in tongues. And that was it. I had a hole in my stomach from all those 28 pills I'd been taking, and that night that was closed up. I was able to eat and not feel pain after, and I was perfectly healed, cleared, no Lyme showing up in my blood, which, you know, is impossible without God. It was years later I found out while sharing my story that my dad said there was no one else in the room. I don't know who you were talking to. There was no one else there. What happened after the prayer? I was like, well, I guess he saw himself out because I didn't see him anymore. And my dad was like, Rachael, that was an angel. No one else saw this person, only you. I remember praying when I was in all that pain and there were no answers, and just asking God to take me. I'm so glad he didn't. We are so short-sighted. We don't have the answers. We don't see where things are going. Only God has that. God truly is the same as he was yesterday, today, and tomorrow. I know it sounds crazy, but I'm so thankful that all that happened because God saved me from a trajectory that was less than. He saved me from feeling and sensing and seeking him as strongly as I could, and all the blessings that come along with that.